Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live today. Glad to see a lot of Australians in the audience, as this is a more Australian themed Facebook Live, but really we're glad to have viewers from all over the world. So thank you all for joining us today. If you haven't yet, please let us know where you're tuning in from. We love seeing you all joining us in the audience and knowing where these Facebook Lives are reaching. So let us know. Thank you so much to everybody who's tuning in, no matter what time of the day it is where you are. So we have a great session lined up for you today. It will be given by the incredible speaker, Shauna Hicks. We've had her on our Facebook Live shows a few times in the past, and it's always such a pleasure. She'll be talking about doing searches on Myheritage and finding discoveries. I assume with a slant towards Australian family history research, as that is her specialty. So we're so thrilled to have her with us today. As well, we have a lot of new things going on here at Myheritage. If you haven't noticed, we came out with a lot of new features over the past couple weeks. The Myheritage timeline, which allows you to see your family tree in a special timeline view. We came out with Myheritage's live story, which takes our deep nostalgia feature one step further and allows you to take a family photo and make your ancestors speak. So it's really an incredible feature, a lot of fun. You can have them say anything from a joke to a family memory, and it really allows you to see them in a different light with a different perspective. So it's really incredible, and a lot of other things coming out soon. We also have the Myheritage Podcast. If you've heard of it, Blast from My Past. So our podcast will come out with new episodes regularly, and you can tune into them wherever you listen to podcasts. So whether that be Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever. So take a look at that. The first episode was out a week or two ago, and that is about the secret of Arakusa, an incredible story, which we featured a bunch of times on our channels, but in podcast format, it's even more emotional and exciting. So make sure to check that out, and we'll be out with the next episode very soon. So I'm sure you'll see an announcement about that coming up. Make sure to stay tuned to all of our announcements at Myheritage on our blog.myheritage.com. There's always new things going on, and that's the best way kind of to stay in touch and know what's coming out, what the new features are, what we're working on here at Myheritage, and also to see some new stories. We're always posting new user stories and videos and a lot of interesting content. So make sure to check it out, blog.myheritage.com. So I'd like to introduce our speaker that we have with us today, Shauna Hicks. For those of you who don't know Shauna, she's been tracing her own family history since 1977. She worked in government for over 35 years in Australian libraries and archives in Brisbane, Canberra, and Melbourne. Since retiring from full-time work, she has written numerous family history guides, and she's a well-known speaker at conferences, seminars, genealogy cruises, and of course at our Facebook Lives as well. She now operates her own part-time business at shaunahicks.com.au, and she's also the author of the blog, A Diary of an Australian Genealogist. It's always a pleasure to have her on our show, and for those of you who want to watch any of her previous sessions that she did for us, they're on our Facebook page under the video section. You can see all of our past Facebook Lives, as well as the ones that Shauna joined us for in the past. Just before I bring her out here to say hello to all of us, just to let you all know that we'll be talking about searching through Myheritage and historical records. So we'd like to do a giveaway today and give away a Myheritage complete plan to one lucky winner in the audience. To win, all that you have to do is let us know about a search that yielded good results on Myheritage. So let us know what you've uncovered on Myheritage about your family history. We'd love to hear how Myheritage helped you with your search and discoveries. So let us know in the comments section, and we'll be giving away a complete plan to one lucky winner in the audience at the end of today's show. Complete plan on Myheritage is the best plan that we have to offer. It'll give you unlimited access to over 16 billion historical records, unlimited family tree size, advanced DNA tools, lots and lots of amazing features and tools that will be at your fingertips. So we're really excited to be able to give that away today. So leave us a comment. And as always, if you have any questions for Shauna throughout, leave a comment in the comment section with a question or a comment. And we'd love to hear from you. So let me bring her onto the screen to say hello now. Let's get her up here. Hello, Shauna.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Oh, I'm excited about giving another talk for Myheritage. It's amazing what you can discover when you set out to do new searches and things like that. So I'm pleased I did this because I've advanced my son's family. So that was good.
Amazing. And it's been a while since we've had you, so we're so glad to have you with us today.
Yes, thank you.
So should we share your screen? Should we get your presentation up?
Okay, I'll share my screen.
Okay. Let's see if we can get it up
And
here.
okay, you should be able to see my screen.
Not yet.
Ah.
Every once in a while we have these technical difficulties, but no worries. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Sometimes we have to try it a couple times just to, oh, there. I think you just have to be in presenter mode and that'll work.
Okay.
Or slideshow mode, and that should. I see a lot of people in the audience I see Debbie from New Zealand and Alta from South Africa. Let's see, who else do we have here? We have June from the United States. Must be pretty late there. So thank you so much for joining us, June. Let's see. We have Nicole from Minnesota, USA, and we have Murray from New Zealand. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Yes.
I have your slides
Yep.
all up, and you're good to go.
Okay, good. Thanks. Sorry for the I don't know, hiccup. It always works when you do the trial, and then you get the hiccup when you start. My talk today is using Myheritage, and I'll be using my own family history examples. Now, I'm based in Australia, so our research starts in Australia, but we have really good birth, death, and marriage certificates, which give us information that allows us to go back and use the records of Myheritage in Europe and the British Isles and America, or wherever our families go. So the reason that I like using Myheritage is because you can analyze your DNA matches and collaborate with others. And if you're all hosting online trees, you can then get together and find things that you might not if you're just working by yourself. I find that quite often DNA matches then tee up with research matches, record matches, and things like that. And of course, you can always do lots and lots of research. Now, this is my screen, and as I said, I will be just using some of my own examples. I'm assuming that most of the people listening to this are familiar with the research facilities and the DNA facilities. So I'm not going to take the time to explain them. I'm just going to show that at the moment I've got 2,300 odd people. I've got 2 family trees, 69 photos, 29 discoveries, and I've got 5 DNA kits that I'm managing. And it covers my own family and my son's family as well. Now, this has to be my biggest Myheritage success story. It happened a few years ago. It's not a recent one. But where I have the arrow, I have John Travascus and Mary Travascus. Now, they lived in Charters Towers in Queensland. It was a mining town, and John was killed in a mining accident in 1906. Mary, his wife, took her 2 children back to Ireland. So John had been born in Queensland, but Mary was Irish, and after John's death, they went back to Ireland. I spent many years trying to find where those 2 children ended up. I couldn't trace Mary. And after a while, you sort of give up on some of your brick walls. But I revisited it using Myheritage, and lo and behold, a descendant of the son, John Henry Travascus, had a family tree on Myheritage, and that was Thelma Travascus. You can see her there on the right hand side of the chart. And she contacted me, and we were able to exchange information. And the reason I couldn't find Mary was because she had remarried. And so, therefore, I didn't know that, and it was difficult to find. But once I found this, we then could work out what had happened to this missing family from our mining ancestors in Charters Towers. So it is useful to revisit because there's always new information. Now, your online tree, you can have that as big or as small as you want. Obviously, if you put collateral lines in, you're more likely to get good DNA matches, or even, better smart matches and things like that. You can add your photos and documents. It's definitely cousin bait, because sometimes the family tree that someone else puts up is your first entrance into unraveling your own family connection. I like it because it's searchable in a whole lot of different ways, and filters and things like that. And of course, we get regular record and smart matches coming through, and also the DNA matches. That all helps to keep you interested, I think. Now, this is another example that I'm just going to go through. It's my second time's great grandmother down the bottom there, Anne Price, and she was born Silk. Now, her father was Daniel Silk, her grandfather was Daniel Silk, and her great grandfather was Daniel Silk. And you might think that Silk's not a very common name. Well, let me tell you, there are more Daniel Silks in the world than you could possibly think. And so I found it quite difficult to unravel some of these silk lines, because they all seem to call their children Daniel. There was a Daniel in just about every one. And so where I have managed to sort this out is with DNA matches. I have an awful lot of DNA matches that tie into this silk family, and I've been able to sort out the individual collateral families and work on it. So it's been quite good to see this tree develop to this particular point. And right at the top, Daniel Silk, he marries a Mary Timmins. And I've been working on Timmins as a family name because, again, I thought it's got to be fairly uncommon, and looking for DNA matches. Now, with Myheritage, you can have this family tree descent type chart, but you can also, with a flick of a switch, change it to the standard pedigree chart. And you can see Daniel Silk and Eliza Brooks to the right. There's Anne Silk. You can see she married Solomon Price. And you can come all the way down to my mother in the bottom left corner. So in some ways, I like the pedigree chart because you get the straight line back, but you miss the collateral lines. And that's why the other chart is better, because then you can start to put some DNA matches to names. So however you like using your charts, you can just flick a switch and you can have what you want. So Daniel Silk, he's 6 generations back for me, and that's getting back to, well, a lot of people can't even get back to the 1780s. And so there are 13 pending smart matches. And as I said, the Silk family, there's lots of DNA matches. And so some of these pending smart matches are definitely all the one family. And because there's so many of us on Myheritage, we can work out who all the correct connections and things like that. And people put in the married names of daughters, which can often be hard to find. You can see Hannah in the middle here. She's got Waitley or Wheatley. So you can imagine searching for name variants on something like that. Same with Marlborough. It's very difficult. Um, so by having these different trees, you can work out what you're looking for. And my Mary Silk, born Timmins, is over here, I believe, at 1749 to 1818. So it's quite early, and certainly, I mean, that's almost at the birth of Australia, because we were established as a European colony in 1788. Now, Mary Timmins, this is the one I'm working on at the moment because it came up as a discovery. And I thought she was born around 1718. And then there's other evidence that she's born around 1722. But it is in Sedgley in Staffordshire. Now, again, that's a small, or was a small parish in Staffordshire back then. And she's a direct ancestor with 8 generations. So that's a long way back. But it's come up with a smart match with someone who's in New Zealand. Now, she's got basically the same family. She's got parents for her, which I haven't been able to locate. And she's only got 4 children, but I've got more children. And so as it comes up as a smart match, if I go yes, it will add 12 people. But I do like to confirm the research and that sort of thing before I confirm and merge into my trees. So this is the one I'm working on at the moment. And it's interesting looking at England in the 1700s. I like to look at the history of the parish and the county and what else is going on in the 1720s. I think it's those stories around our ancestors that are just as important as the birth, death, and marriage type information. So this will be a continuation in another talk once I've sorted it. Now, tree completeness is something that we talk about with DNA matching. If you've got a really complete tree, it can be quite easy to do your DNA matches because you have no brick walls. This is my mother's, and it is a complete tree, although I've got some lines not visible here. But the only brick wall on Mum's tree, all the others are filled in, and I've got DNA matches and that sort of thing, is the one on the left, which is Elizabeth Peploe and Henry Price. Both of those were deceased by the 1851 census, and I have no idea who those 4 people are. Now, everyone else in the tree I can connect with DNA matches, but because I don't know their parents and I'm stuck here, I'm hoping that some of Mum's unknown DNA matches that I can't slot in anywhere else because of tree completeness, that means they have to be Price and Peploe. So that's another work in progress, or a brick wall that I'm trying to demolish at the moment. So I've talked a little bit about how I'm doing DNA matching with my trees. And I like DNA tools on Myheritage. I like the fact that I can have multiple kits and I get the DNA match updates. I think all of that helps to keep me interested. Now, my favourite tools are the chromosome browser and the auto clusters. I find they are really useful for honing in on who you're matching to. Now, I mentioned the Timmins family in Staffordshire. These 2 are recent DNA matches that interested me because they were from that part of Staffordshire. Richard Timmins still has the Timmins name, and he's in Australia. So that's interesting because my Timmins are back there, but we have that connection. And Carl Owens is in the United Kingdom. Now, it has Timmins there, but he also has Brooks. And Brooks is another one of my families that married into the Silk family. So when you're looking at these matches, and you'll notice that Carl is a low confidence match because it's small segments, but it's also a big distance in time, and therefore that probably gives you the low confidence rating. But when I look at his trees and I see the Brooks and the Timmins, and I know that somewhere there's going to be that connection, but it'll be 5 or 6 or even 7 generations back. And so once you get these matches, you then go back to your trees and you see whether you can tie them in. Now, Carl Owens had a number of trees. This is his Brooks family, and it's from West Bromwich in Staffordshire. Now, my Brooks were from West Bromwich, and back in the 1770s, it was not a very big place. So that gave me confidence that this is a match and trees that are worth following up on. If you don't recognise names with your DNA matches, I find it helps to focus on places, because if they come from the same place and it's relatively small, then chances are there's going to be a connection in there somewhere. Now, his Carl's Richard Timmins goes back to the 1540s, and that's a long way back, but they're from Sedgley. Now, Sedgley is the neighbouring parish to West Bromwich. So you have to know where your parishes are and how they relate to each other. So the chances are I am definitely related to Carl Owens through the Brooks and maybe even the Timmins family, but it is a distant connection, and I will have to do some further research to fill out my trees to the completeness to get them back to that 1700s, or if I can, to the 1500s, and then I'll be able to prove that connection and update my tree. So it's kind of exciting to get these new matches and see where they actually lead to. Now, this was another relatively new DNA match, and this person was in the United States. She doesn't have a tree, so you can't look at that. I mean, it says a family tree, but there's only one person, so you can't use that. Now, it's a relatively good centimorgan match at 34.9, but it's 4 segments and 10 is the largest. So again, I'm looking at a distant match. But what excited me about this one was that it matched my brother and it triangulated. So you can see down the bottom that there's the triangulation symbol on the right-hand side, which meant that she shared a same piece of DNA as myself and my brother. So that kind of visual clue sends me off down to find who is this person and where does she connect. There are 72 DNA matches for her, but not all of them are going to be relevant. Some of them may be false clues, but certainly the piece that she shares with myself and my brother is worth looking into. So I then went into the chromosome browser and picked other matches that she and I both connected on. And as you can see, chromosome 14 is where we all lined up rather nicely. Now, it's on my father's side. I have 3 biological ancestors there who I don't know who they are. So that's a bit of a challenge for me. One is my grandfather and another is a great-grandmother and a great-great-grandfather. So there's 3 ancestors. I don't know who they are. And therefore, with my DNA matches, I'm looking for these connections. Now, this doesn't tie in with any known family, so it has to be one of those 3 unknowns. So I can sort of narrow down some of my biological searching in that way. Now, coming to research, because obviously, while DNA is a tool and online trees are a tool, research is how we actually prove all of our records and our family traits. Because I'm a former librarian, archivist kind of person, I tend to use the catalogue. I search the catalogue, I filter down, and I rarely use a keyword search. Now, I know that's the opposite to what most people do, is they use the keyword search and not the catalogue. And the keyword search is what I've done for this talk, just because that's going to lead me down the path most people search. But I will also show you how I do a catalogue search and filter right down to make it easier for myself. And so I'll be discussing some of those filters and family trees. Okay, so this is the search historical records page. And as Esther said, there's 16.8 billion records. And any search is going to bring back thousands and thousands of names. Even if you've got a really uncommon surname, it's amazing what will turn up. So you need to use the filters. Now, you do have name, year of birth, and a place. You can also put in things like father, mother, spouse, death, and there's more if you want. But you're still doing a keyword search, which isn't a bad thing. But if it was me, I would start with the catalogue, which when you hit that research button in the top right, the catalogue comes down, and I'll show you shortly. So we're going to do some keyword searching. This is the collection catalogue. Okay, I'll just show you before I do a search. Now, on the left, you've got all the collections. So you can filter by a particular category of type record. You're looking for births, marriages, and deaths. You can narrow it down into that. Or if you're looking for military records or public records or whatever. You can also refine by location. And Australia is under Oceania. You can then further refine Oceania down to Australia, New Zealand, and I think Samoa, something like that. And of course, one that I use quite a bit with my early research is you can refine by years. There's no point looking at records in the 1900s if you're searching for people in the 1500s. So think about that date, refining your dates, which will knock out a lot of the more recent type of records. And as you can see, a lot of these get updated regularly. So you do have to come back and continue with your searching. So I like to go by country, and Ireland is on my father's side, and he's a biological unknown. And so I spend time just looking in Ireland. I know the family's from Ireland, and I don't need anything else. So I go into the country Ireland, and I have a look at the collection catalogue. There's 111 collections. Now, that's a lot less than we saw with the first page, but it's still 14 million records. So even if you do a keyword search, you're still going to probably get too many records, and then you have to filter them further. So I've got Ireland. Now, one of the things I encourage people to do with catalogues is browse them. You don't know what's in a catalogue, but people don't browse. And something that you browse, it's like going to a library and you see books on the shelf and you run your finger along the shelf and you think, oh, that looks interesting. And you pick it up. You wouldn't search for it, but it grabs your attention because you're browsing. Now, this is only 111 collections. I would browse all 111 and work out which ones are relevant to my particular Irish research. It's not a big, unmanageable type collection. It's not 3,000 or something, but 111, anything around 100 is my limit, but I would do this. So when you search down, I ended up with, instead of all those collections, I ended up in histories, memories, and biographies. There's 35 collections here with 30,000 records, which isn't a lot, but there's a lot of background context type material in some of these types of histories. And as you can see just from this screen, you've got county families of the United Kingdom. There's a history and topography of the county of Clare. Now, if your family were from Clare, that'd definitely be worth looking at. It doesn't have a lot of people's names in it, but it has that history that allows you to understand the family at the time. The council book of the Corporation of the City of Cork starts in 1609. How early is that for Ireland? And again, if you've got Cork ancestors, you might want to have a look at it. And so on. You would go down and have a look at all 35 collections and then open them up if you think they're relevant for either your person's name or the place or the context and history of the times. So think about filtering down through the collections. Now, this is looking for my American cousins. Dad's cousin, my first cousin, twice removed, Mari Finn, she married an American serviceman. They had a child in Queensland in 1943, and she went back to the United States as a war bride. And I didn't think I could find too much on her in America because it's got a much bigger population than Australia. So I did put in Marie Doris Sipsma. Now, this is a keyword search. I haven't filtered down. It's all collections. And I just put in her name because I thought Sipsma was an uncommon name. And it's amazing, again, how many Sipsmas there are in America. So I did get these two family trees here. They've got born Doris, but Doris is her middle name. I don't think they knew what her surname was. And that may be because it wasn't recorded in any documents over there. She might have been Marie Doris and they just thought Doris was the surname. But she was actually Finn. So I did that keyword search. You can see that under all collections, it's brought up lots and lots of hits there. But the first two were really relevant because they both relate to her and they're both managed by different people. And so you need to compare because sometimes one person has more on the family than someone else. Now, when I went in and had a look, I could see that it was the right person. She'd married John Lambert Sipsma, and it tells me when she died and where she was buried. It told me from the hints on the right-hand side here, going through those, there was a reference to billion graves, social security death indexes. I could see that John Lambert Sipsma, there was military type records for him and census and all kinds of things for him. So it was definitely the right family, and there were lots of clues here for me to follow up. Leaping over to the billion graves reference, there was the headstone for her. I'm not likely to go to Wisconsin anytime soon, so that was a good thing to find. The other thing that I found that was really interesting was US city directories on Myheritage. They are really, really interesting when you get into them. And so this told me there was a reference to her in 1952, and there was also reference to her between 1947 and 1954. So when I followed those up, the nice thing about Myheritage is that down the bottom on the left where it's got records, it's actually listed the reference in all of those years. So I don't have to go in and out of the records to see what they are. Myheritage has just automatically done that for me and put it in her form there. Although, like most things, it's under the husband's name and she's the housewife. But it's definitely them. And the purple line that I've got on the screen there, that just shows you what a directory looks like. There are two Sipsmas in this directory, and one is John and one is Theo, and they were brothers. I could work out that relationship from more research in Myheritage. So don't neglect directories. They are really useful. We have them in Australia. You can get them in the UK and elsewhere. Now, one of the really nice things I found was yearbooks for John Sipsma. And I could, because he was from Kenosha and they were still in Wisconsin, I knew that it was him. And by using the colorizing feature, I've got a nice photo of him from his school years, and I can just imagine him in an American uniform, sweeping Dad's cousin off her feet, and the whirlwind marriage, and being whisked off to the US as a war bride. So that was nice. It put a face to the person that she had married. Now, I did have a little look just to see where his family was from, because I wasn't familiar with the Sipsma, and it probably goes back to Germany or one of those other European type countries there. But I did get his siblings. There's Theodore there, or Theo, and it also says check the record on Family Search. So there's another tip to go and have a look at another record, and you can then see if there's anything new on Family Search, or you can just come back here. I haven't proved this yet, but they had a daughter, Janice May Sipsma, and I'm not sure if that's her. She was born in 1943 here in Queensland, and I think it could be her. I found a Janice M. Sipsma in the US Public Records Index. The birth date is correct, 23rd of June 1943. I could confirm that from the Queensland Birth Index. So that one is definitely her. Now, we did believe that she had married Reardon, and that was confirmed by one of the other family trees on Myheritage. But when I looked at Janice M. Reardon's death record in the US Social Security Death Index, the date of birth is slightly wrong. Now, that could be that whoever filled it in didn't know her date of birth or got it wrong, or it's not her at all. So I'd have to check that record further to make sure it was the one that I'm looking for. But I've got all this information just by deciding I would follow up on the War Bride story. I thought I would also have a little look at one of my son's ancestors, which always gives me grief every time I look, because his grandfather was Speed Andrews, or Andrew Speed, and the family alternated between Speed Andrews and Andrew Speed all over the place. And of course, it gets indexed quite funny too, because even it's a double-barreled surname, but people get it wrong. So I have a real trial trying to find these people. But I did know that Henry Speed Andrews, or Henry Andrew Speed, married in Ireland a Mary Jane Justice. I got that from certificates here in Queensland. And so in Myheritage, I did a broad keyword search here, and it did turn up these two relevant entries as the first two, which was good. So one was the marriage, and you can see the husband is Henry Andrew Speed, and in the top one, which is a family tree, you can see that it's down as Henry Speed Andrews, but they are all of the same family. So I had these two collections to follow up. I first looked at the marriage, and it also gave me the straightaway references from the 1861, 71 and 1881 census for the UK. And so that's another nice feature, because instead of having to then hive off and check each of those census individually, they're all grouped here so that you can see, yes, this is the right person, or no, maybe I've got a question and that kind of thing. Where the arrow is, you can see they found more records for Mary Jane Andrews or Mary Jane Speed or Mary Jane Andrew Speed and so on. So I then had to go through all of those as well. Um, some of the children ended up as Henry Andrew Speed. This is my son's great grandfather. Um, so he was definitely an Andrew Speed. And of course, you can always check and confirm some of this material by contacting people who've got websites. I looked at the marriage and Mary Jane Speed in more detail, and here's when I looked at the 1871 England census on Myheritage. The document was there. If there is an original document, you should always read it because there's more information than in an indexed record. And what we have here is Henry Andrew Speed. He's 46. He's a retired naval instructor with the Royal Navy. He's got a Greenwich pension. He was born at Castle Carey in Somerset. There's a lot of information in that occupation there, and it allows me to track the family because they were all connected to the Navy in some way. Some of them were medical doctors on ships and that sort of thing. So that's really good, and check original records. Now, I was feeling quite chuffed with myself because I was finding all this new information, and I thought, I'm going to attack my Danish or my son's Danish connections. It might have been a bridge too far, but Maren Thomsen was born in 1853 in Denmark. Her father was Thomas Rasmussen, and her mother was Johanna Pedersen. That's from Queensland certificates. So the first entry here is not her because this person ended up dying in Denmark in 1925. But this one here, I thought was worth having a look at because the father is Thomas Rasmussen and the mother is Johanna Pedersen. So there's a lot of similarity there, and it could be her. When I went in further and had a look, this Maren here had a daughter. Now, she couldn't have been if it was mine because she'd already left for Queensland. So perhaps this is a mistake on this particular family, or they have some reason for thinking that this person does belong to this particular Maren Thomsen. So I had a look further, and Maren Thomsen came to Australia in 1878. This daughter is 1882. So either this is not the right one, even though the parents match and the dates kind of match, or this is incorrect. So this is where you get inconsistencies and you have to follow up and try and resolve them. But I was still quite excited because the family did come from Poring, and so I do believe it is them, but there's a bit more work to do on my Danish. Now, Maren, she married a Niels Hansen out here in Queensland, and they had a whole heap of children. And I found someone with a tree on Myheritage, and it's got the parents and it's got all the children. And so this is another connection that I was able to make, and lots of information on deaths and burials and things like that. I did try to find a birth record for Niels Hansen, and I think I may have found the right one. We thought he was born around 1853. This one is born at the end of 1851, christened in 1852, but the parents match, Hans Nielsen and Anne Sorensdatter, although in the Queensland certificates we had Sorensen. So I still think that's probably a good candidate for the birth, the baptism. So I can follow that up and confirm. I went back to England then, and I thought I'd see how I did with my son's um, family. Barrow and Carrodus are two surnames that have come through for well over 150 years. There are so many Barrows as a middle name or Carrodus as a middle name. I knew that it had to go back to a particular couple somewhere. So I found John Barrow Carrodus, and this is the marriage. They were in Hawkshead, and we descend from Mary Carrodus over here, and his parents were John Carrodus and Sarah Barrow. So that was the start of this tradition of naming your kid Barrow or Carrodus. And then I went and had a look at the marriage. I found the marriage in Myheritage, 1786, and then it gave me their deaths and so on. So that was exciting for me because it just seemed to be all unfolding quite easily. I did a search on our Mary Carrodus, 1819. I did put in her father's name and a place of Westmoreland, but you'll notice over here, instead of just doing all collections, I focused on birth, marriage, and death. And that brings the birth records down to 67. Okay, it's much easier to find records when you focus in on a particular type of record. Now, there are 3 references to her christening here. They're all the same, but they've been indexed from different films, and that's why you've got 3 different records. But I did get her christening in 1820, so that was exciting. Following through and getting all the details and the citation, so you've got the family search film number and the indexing project number. Following through on more records for Mary Carrodus, they led to a family search tree, which is this one over here. And whoever this tree belongs to didn't know Mary's spouse, and that's probably because they weren't looking in Queensland. So I could add in the details to this family search tree if I wanted to and add to that general knowledge of the family. I then did a look for the marriage. So I'm still looking for Mary, but I've gone back and selected the marriage. So you can see I'm working through the different levels of the records and getting all the information on her from the search results. But I'm doing it much more easier than if it was in the big list and you've got to filter through or scroll through them. So here we've got the marriage, and William Atkinson is there, and we can see that they got married in 1844 in Hawkshead, and then their son came out to Queensland. There's more information here. Mary Atkinson, born Carrodus. So that obviously is my person. There's also something in Genie World Tree as well as Family Search. So it pays to check these out because this person in Family Search has been given this number and various records attached to them. But over in the research help here, they've highlighted that it could be a possible duplicate because the real Mary Carrodus with all the family attachments and everything is this number here. So when you click on that, it asks you to review and possibly merge on the duplicate. And that can happen because people come at research from different levels and may not know about connections down under. So have a look at those. Here's another success story. This is my son's 4 times great-grandfather. I was on a roll. Robert Bullen was born 1790 in Cornwall. Now, we knew from certificates he was a taxman or an exciseman. So, doing that broad keyword search, I come up with a family tree. And I could see that there was a handwritten document as a photograph there, and that really intrigued me. All these surnames and that matched up. I knew I had the right one. And I went in and I found that he was an officer of excise at Port Isaac in 1830. And I sort of wondered how they proved that. And that's what this document is about. It's a 3-page document, apparently, but they've only uploaded 1 page. So I want to know what's the source and how I can see the other pages. Um, Here's the document, and just where the arrow is, it just says, I declare that my wife, the said Annabella Edgecombe Bullen, died at Port Isaac aforesaid, and was buried in the said parish of St. Endelion, on or about the 10th day of March in the year 1829. So that's proof that she died. There's a document around that information. I'm not quite sure why he was doing this declaration. And then right down the bottom, there's his signature. I mean, how often do we get a 4 times great grandfather's signature? And when I was looking at Port Isaac, just to see what the place looked like, I thought, gosh, it looked so familiar. I felt that I knew Port Isaac. And of course, it's where they filmed Doc Martin, which is a television TV show that's run for I don't know how many series. And I've watched all of them because I absolutely love the Cornish village concept and all that sort of thing. But now that I know our 4 times great great grandmother actually died in that village. So it's important that we link the documents to the stories and to images. Just a couple more. This is Annabella Edgecombe Nottle. And again, you'd think, wow, uncommon name. But there's over 2 million results if you use that broad keyword search. So you can see what I mean about narrowing it down or going into collections. But doing the search was still useful because it did turn up the family website I had earlier, but it turned up a second one, which I hadn't found with the first search. So sometimes searching from different angles will give you different results. And so here was someone else with the same family. So this is then where I start to drill down, and I was looking for the marriage of the Robert Bullen and Annabella Edgecombe Nottle, and it's 1804 in Devon. Again, incredibly early to be getting these sorts of results. So I thought just in the few hours that I spent compiling this talk and doing these searches and that I had actually achieved quite a lot. There were more records for her, and of course there were references to her over in Family Search. And again, I could put in all the information that we have about the descendants in Australia into this family tree. So the lessons I've learned, experiment with the filters. When you vary your search, you do get different results. Different results come to the top depending on what the filters are. And if you do focus searches, whether it just be in Ireland or Australia or wherever, that also narrows down the results that you get, but you probably get more meaningful results from the more tight searches. You will discover new information. I'm almost surprised myself with what I learned in the preparation of this talk. Although I haven't done anything with my son's family for, I don't know, 20 years or something, but I'm about to become a grandmother, so I thought I should do something. And you need to cross-check for consistency and accuracy. So my last thoughts here today are the importance of stories. You've got to have more than just a name and a date. Tie it into something that actually means and tells a story. Always look for the new resources and review your research regularly. And you do need some good luck. I will stop sharing now so that Esther can take control and handle any questions. So I'm stop sharing.
Oh, let's just get that. There we go. Thank you,
Oh,
Shauna.
yeah.
So, first of all, congratulations on becoming a grandmother soon. That's very exciting. And I see some comments in the audience about that as well. So, great news and a great time to start researching that line of family history.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Um,
let's see, we do have a few questions from the audience, a couple great comments and a few questions. And of course, if you have any questions, if anyone here has any questions, please let us know now and we can get to them. Annette asked, where would you look for a possible Indian marriage in the mid 1800s? Someone that was married to Thomas Feely from Ireland. He was in the army.
and where was he? In America, did you say?
Um,
Or
I think in Ireland,
in Ireland? So you're looking for an Irish military person.
I guess.
Okay, Ireland would have been under British rule, and so you'll probably find, I don't know, the National Archives of the UK. I would certainly start looking at some of the military records that they hold. It would depend on the time period. So, yeah, you have, when you've got a question like that, you have to think, where are the records? And so Ireland, the records may be in Ireland at the National Archives, or if it's Northern Ireland, maybe Prony. But at that time period, um, Irish soldiers would have been under the control of the British Army, and therefore those records are in the National Archives. So I'd start by looking for some guides on their website, or just doing some catalogue searching for, Irish soldiers in Britain at that time. So yeah, it's a matter of where are the records and then go looking for them, or you do something like a military search in Myheritage and see if that turns up something. That's another way of going about it.
Annette here says they were married in India. So any tips there?
Married in India, that sounds like British Army and British India. And so there's a whole um, group of records there for the East India Company and British soldiers in India, a whole different field. I've done a few queries in there and I've been surprised at what you can actually find, especially if you're prepared to go through different kinds of records. So, but again, yes, British India, and then look for both the British Army records and the East India records, because they had their own army, which was largely British people, but they weren't British Army. So yeah.
I have a question for you, actually, because I know that as someone who does genealogy, you're constantly updating your tree or doing work on your genealogy. So, what advice do you have for people who want to, as you said, bring up about restarting certain paths of research every few years, and how important, how regularly should we be starting? Restarting research when where we left it off a few years ago, that type of thing.
Um, well, I've been researching for 45 years now. So I never really stop. And I found during COVID that you had more time to research because you weren't out and about and you couldn't go anywhere. And so you discovered more records. I don't think you ever really, if you have got that genealogy bug, you keep looking for those people that you haven't been able to find. And I know that brick walls I had last century, um, they have been sold in this century because the records have now been indexed or digitized, or Myheritage has made them available in a more accessible way. So it's but what's online is still just the tip of the iceberg, really. There's so much more in the archives. The big challenge, I think, is um, preparing your records for when you're not here. That's my challenge. I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, and it made me think, if I popped off now, what would happen to all of my files, my binders, my books, and everything. So I've been digitizing, scanning, writing the family history, and tying up these loose ends so that I can leave it all on one USB stick. It's a little bit ambitious, but I might need more than one. But yeah, it's making sure that all your research isn't lost. I think that's really important. But yeah, it's a hobby that you can go backwards and forwards to.
And that's such an important point about, about how you leave your research. We actually had a session not too long ago, I think a few months ago, with Thomas McKenty about, about how to leave your research or how to prepare your research for others to take over. And obviously not to think bad thoughts or anything, but just to always be prepared, just like insurance. And
Yeah, yeah, because you sort of don't know when your number's up, but yeah, it's don't let your research be chucked out. I think that's the message I give people. Make sure it's in a format that someone can take it over or give it to a society, or someone that would value it.
yes, so true. And just everyone out there, you can watch that session that I mentioned about that Thomas gave. It's on our Facebook page under the video section. You'll see all of our Facebook lives, and you can watch that one as well as this one if you'd like to rewatch it and recap on what we went through today. So, Shauna, I'd like to give away the Myheritage Complete Plan with your with your blessing. And it's a great plan, as you said. It gives you access to a lot of the features that you discussed today, all 16.8 billion historical records that you showed how to search through. So thank you so much to everyone who gave in comments about what you've discovered and what's come up over this past period where you've had time to do your family history research. And our winner today of a Myheritage Complete Plan is Barbara Cooper. And Barbara wrote to us and she said, I found my birth nephew Eric's father, whom we'd been looking for over 20 years. Eric was given up for adoption at birth, and I helped reunite my sister with her child in 1997 through the help of internet searchers. She had lost touch with his birth father before he was born, and we had no luck for many years finding anything about him. We finally found out he died when he was a baby, but we were able to find his grave in a nearby city thanks to Myheritage, and I was able to visit and share pictures of his grave with my nephew. I was also able to share this information with my sister, his birth mother, the last time I talked to her right before she died of cancer. So that's just so nice, and what a way to find closure. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Barbara, and we'll be in touch with you through private message to claim your prize. Shauna, thank you so much for joining us today and for this lovely
Well,
session.
thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you.
We really appreciate it, and we hope that you stay well and stay safe over there, and we hope to see you again soon. So